Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com, and it's a real pleasure to welcome today our speaker, Stefano Tempesta, for a session all about blockchain and CRM. It should be a really interesting one. We had a great response to this event, which is probably no surprise to you if you're on here, because it probably got your interest as well. As we get started today, I just want to remind folks that you can ask questions, and I know Stefano will be making time at a couple points throughout the event. Look for the Q&A block just to the right of the slides, and if you don't see that, look up to the upper right and look for a question mark icon. Click that. That should open up the Q&A interface for you to ask your questions. So without any further delay, Stefano, I am going to hand things off to you.
Thank you, Jason. Hello, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Stefano Tempesta. Today I want to share a bit of a vision, hopefully, around blockchain and CRM. And just to be specific, when I mean CRM, I'm not talking to a product, to dynamic CRM specifically, although we all love dynamic CRM, obviously. I'm talking about customer relationship management as a process, as an attitude. So we'll see how we can identify some synergies and opportunities for blockchain in CRM context. So really, this is the agenda for today. First of all, we all hearing about Bitcoin, the blockchain itself. We may want just to set a bit of terminology for everybody, just to understand what is a digital ledger, what are smart contracts, cryptlets. So just to clarify a bit, what is the context where blockchain is emerging. And I want to do it specifically as Microsoft offering in Azure. Microsoft is offering blockchain ledgers in Azure as a service. What does it mean for us that we are in the process of implementing blockchain? What does it mean for our customers that want to adopt a blockchain solution? Once we clarify this ground, then we go more into use cases. Industries that are experimenting, that are pioneering blockchain in customer relationship management. We'll see this in the context of a CRM portal integration, for example, or applications besides fintech. Well, obviously, blockchain fits perfectly in a fintech context, right? It was born there, was born to support the Bitcoin digital currency. But I believe that there are business applications of blockchain that go beyond fintech itself. And there are some industries that are already experimenting in it. So we'll have a look into some of these applications and what are the opportunities and benefits that they can produce. All right, so let's get started. We have a lot of content. As Jason said, feel free to drop your question in the Q&A. I try to break in between the two major topics and take some questions if there are any. Otherwise, at the end, obviously, of the session. Just briefly by myself, that's me, social coordinate on screen. If you want to get in touch, I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm based in Switzerland, where I lead the chapter for CRM UG. Alrighty, then blockchain as a service in Azure. But first of all, blockchain. What is it? Let's give a bit of a step back here just to understand what blockchain is. Now, you see a bullet point list here, some terminology, some attributes of blockchain. Is a data structure. We use this data structure as a digital ledger, and we try to understand why we need a digital ledger, first of all. But this digital ledger is special in some way. Otherwise, it would be just another data structure. It would be another database table, right? So it is, first of all, cryptographically secure. And emphasis is on cryptographically, so it means that it's absolutely secure. You can't tamper with it. It is shared, distributed, and transactional. We'll go through that. We'll try to understand why we need all of these attributes in a digital ledger to be considered a blockchain and the benefit that it brings. But allow me to do a little regression here. Believe it or not, blockchain was invented 2,500 years ago in the island of Yap. Not kidding. Well, obviously, we're not calling it blockchain. But basically, the inhabitants of this remote island in the Pacific Ocean, the Yapese, were using a form of barter for exchange of goods and services. Now, they had a problem though. They didn't have anything valuable on the island. They could use as a coin, right, for exchanging for goods, so for payment. No precious metals, no gold, no silver, no shining stones. Apparently, paradoxically, for an island in the Pacific Ocean, not even some nice seashells they could use for trading. But they had big rocks, large rocks. I mean, very heavy boulders. So these rocks were impossible to move around. So they came up with a concept of ownership of a rock called Rai stone, R-A-I stone. I'm not making it up. Google it, R-A-I stone, Rai stone. Each Yapese knew which rock belonged to whom. It was global knowledge. Each and every single individual in the village had this information. So when a trade would occur, the buyer, the Yapese, would transfer ownership of the rock to the seller. So they wouldn't move the rock physically. They would transfer ownership. It's a form of compensation, obviously. And this was a public act. Everybody in the village knew that a specific rock would transfer owner. They did have neither a chief of village nor a sorcerer to own this information, which rock belongs to whom. And you see, you try to understand what is the benefit here, why they would do that. What would happen, if someone with this valuable knowledge would lose their memory or suddenly die? What if this shaman would spell some witchcraft or ask for a portion of ownership of the rock? What if they would be corrupted and accumulate rocks as their possession? So a single Yapese in the village owning this critical information would be what we nowadays call a single point of failure. So the story and a longer, better explanation of blockchain is nicely illustrated in an animation that you can find on YouTube. It's called Blockchain Explanation. It talks about the Yap Island and more than that. So I highly recommend you to watch this video. But for now, let's keep on going. Let's keep on talking about blockchain. And we said it's a data structure. All right, so it's a data structure. So let's fast forward to our current time now, put this story in technology terms. So we need to record what? A seller, a buyer, an amount of value that is exchanged. How we do that? Excel spreadsheet, right? We need just a spreadsheet to collect this information. All right, let's make it better. Maybe we need a database table. Fair enough. But in general, we need a persistent and immutable form of data structure to record transaction and all the parties involved. So blockchain is a database. All right. I'm still not convinced. Let's carry on. What else? It is cryptographically secure. All right, so now the analogy with the Yap Island takes a different turn. Whereas in the small Pacific island, everybody will know about the transaction, the rock ownership. In a modern digital world, this is not possible. We have to protect our privacy. We have to protect our belongings. We have to prevent theft. of identity and wealth. So at the core of blockchain is the concept of cryptographic security, not just generic security. That is, protecting information with a username and password. Here is rather a hash encrypted data that is not possible to tamper with. And this is done with the implementation of symmetric cryptography based on public and private keys, hashing the block in the chain, and so on. Now, it is a secure database. It is an encrypted database. I'm still not getting why we need blockchain. We all have a secure database, and they are all also potentially distributable, right, or decentralizable. So we can have databases that have different regions, different locations where they are installed. What is blockchain resolving that we can't do with a secure encrypted database that is installed in different locations? All right, so on Yap Island, there was no chief of village owning this book of transactions. But in the real world, in our world, in the modern world, transactions happens between two people, typically with an exchange of something valuable, coins, money, banknotes. In the physical world, when we transfer physical currency, say Alice is transferring some money to Bob to buy something. Once the money moves out of Alice's wallet into Bob's hands, money belongs to Bob. So Alice cannot spend that any longer. But in a digital world, a digital currency, like Bitcoins, for example, what is it? Is a file, is a digital entity, is a bit and byte. We can all copy bit and bytes. We can all copy files. So we have a challenge now. We have a challenge of ensuring that this valuable currency, digital currency, cannot be copy and paste, that we can reuse it over again to buy additional products and can be used only once. All right, so we need an authority. We need Dave as our agent that in between Alice and Bob works as a ledger. That's exactly the meaning of a ledger. It is someone that is a third party, an agent, a system, a person that keeps track of all the transactions in a proper data structure. Input and output, transaction value. That's the meaning of digital ledger, right? Now this entity must be utterly trustworthy, incorruptible, and with trust we need to have you have to have integrity. They have to have integrity. What happens if they don't? We are back of the problem of the village wizard, right? And now, no sorcery here. We simply want to prevent chances for data correction, transaction fees, and in general, single responsibility. And here is where we have the value of blockchain. Our digital ledger has to be decentralized. This is the key of a database that is secure, it is shared, it is transactional because we record all the transactions, but the big change here in technology is it is decentralized. Only by distributing a copy of the ledger and removing its central ownership, blockchain is able to provide this level of independence, incorruptibility that differentiate this technology from a normal transactional secure database. So this is the big change. Now, once we have appreciated this, we can discuss the benefits of blockchain and applications beyond financial, beyond fintech. It is a secure, it is shared, distributed ledger. So it doesn't belong to anybody. but everybody in the network, so everybody that is part of the circle of trust. So let me go back one slide. This circle of trust, that is all the peers that have a copy of this ledger possess it. It doesn't belong to anybody. It doesn't belong to Alice. It doesn't belong to Bob. It doesn't belong to Dave. It doesn't belong to anybody. Everybody possesses it. Everybody has a copy of it, which means that by nature is incorruptible. I mean, it is very hard to corrupt it because it means that we have to go for each peer, each individual or entity in the circle of trust and convince them to play my game, right? Or all of them, they have to agree among them to set, say, transaction fees or steal information and so on. So we live out of the power of the crowd, basically. This is the concept of the decentralized ledger. All right, that was just an overview. The Rhinestones is a real one. That's the reference on Wikipedia. Feel free to read about this Pacific Ocean Island, get inspired for a trip maybe. It's still there, so absolutely fantastic destination. The video, blockchain explanation, is on YouTube, so watch it whenever you can. Always good to have a funny angle to the story. And I also recommend this article from CB Insight, What is Blockchain Technology? I personally found it very clear in the explanation of blockchain as a distributed, decentralized digital ledger. So just some reference as a follow-up. And now we go into technology. And now we go specifically to Microsoft Azure. What is Microsoft doing? It's offering blockchain as a service. This is a screenshot from Microsoft Azure portal. You know that there is a marketplace with a lot of services that you can spin off in Azure, computing, networking, storage, and so on. There is a new one called blockchain. They just put it at the end, so if it doesn't fit in your screen, scroll down, it's there, believe me. And then you can see some offerings, some features, some services that you can offer. You see, there is an Ethereum consortium blockchain, there is a Hyperledger, Corda, Quorum, Strato, and so on. What are they? They are digital ledger, single ledger, multi-node ledgers that we can deploy in Azure. They are not Microsoft technology. Actually, most of them are open source. Microsoft is offering as a service. We could theoretically download it from their own website and install it in our servers. They typically run on a Linux box. Microsoft is offering this as a service. So instead of us going to the IT guy, asking for a virtual machine, spending hours or days installing the digital ledger on a Linux box, in a few clicks we can deploy. We've been asked for a few configuration settings along the way, and then have a digital ledger ready in the cloud. So this is the blockchain as a service, state of the art as it is now. We are mid of December 2017. All right, I can see already there is in the Q&A a question: how do I connect the ERP and CRM? I'm getting there. That's exactly the point of having blockchain in Azure, because it creates a circle of trust that will include ERP and CRM. At the moment, or with a normal blockchain, we can't do that, because blockchain is a circle of trust that is created among all peers, nodes that are part of this consortium, and external application like a CRM or ERP wouldn't be allowed because they're not part of the circle of trust. But Microsoft is working on this. Okay, so just a quick recap. There are different blockchains, different technologies. They are not Microsoft-owned technology. but Microsoft is deploying them as a service. But as said, it can't happen with the normal blockchain. The normal blockchain is the one that we are used to here to read around, is the public one that is used for Bitcoins, for example. It's a public because everybody can join. People that join or entities that join it are typically unknown, so transactions are anonymous, but they are visible to everybody. So we know that there is a transaction happen. That's the power of not having a distributed database, data structure, but it is anonymous. Now, in this context, a CRM, an ERP, can't be part of this public network by nature, because in an ERP, in a CRM, well, first of all, we have identities, we know where they are, but also is not a blockchain technology by nature itself. So we need to move into a context of a private network. Private network that Microsoft is building for the enterprise, where we use the blockchain technology, but we basically deliver to an enterprise. So the participants are known entities. The consortium is an additional way of doing blockchain that is a bit in between public and private, where we know who is part of the consortium, but still maintain the openness. It's not a closed circle. There are multiple parties, multiple organizations that can be part of this consortium. A private is really a private one, although still shared and distributed and decentralized as a digital ledger and blockchain should be. So that was the public one. The Bitcoin one is blockchain 1.0. And actually, it's not even meant for applications like an ERP, a CRM, a website, or an e-commerce portal. It's only meant for transaction, purely data transaction, because it was invented to support the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. Let's call it blockchain 1.0. Then we have a requirement now. We have a requirement of deploying applications that have some form of business logic, some form of automation, some form of if then else, to make it simple, that based on value, based on data that we transfer in a transaction within blockchain, apply some logic. This is what the smart contracts are. And to deliver this smart contract still within the blockchain, we need an evolution of blockchain. Let's call it 2.0. Now, smart contracts run within blockchain. They are like a normal contract, like you're buying a car, and then you go to the seller, you agree on the selling conditions. So there are some conditions though. Maybe you want to have a mechanical review, and then you bring your trusted mechanic to have an investigation on the car. Or maybe you want to check that they've done what in the UK we call an MOT, no? So it's a verification of good state of the car is before doing the transaction. And maybe you want to agree that if it doesn't pass the mechanical review, you get a discount. So there are some conditions that in a blockchain 1.0 you can't apply. There is no if then else logic in that. This is purely a transaction of value. Smart contracts do that. And then the smart contracts are part of the block itself, and they are then distributed, deployed to all the nodes, which creates also a limitation, no? So as the data is immutable, also the smart contract is immutable, because now everybody in the circle of trust has the same contract, has been signed. So if you want to update the conditions on the contract, which in software terms may mean you are versioning, you're putting an update, you have to go to all the nodes where they have a copy of the contract and agree with them to change it, to upgrade. It is a challenge because you are requesting a change to a block that by nature should be immutable. There are workarounds for that, but we're not going into the details now. So blockchain 1.0 has some limitation, is locked into a vendor, Bitcoin, simple data transaction. Blockchain 2.0, we have different vendors, Ethereum, Corda, Hyperledger, and many others, and can handle more than just data. Can handle smart contracts. Is the only private, is only or can be deployed as part of a consortium, and some other benefits that you see on screen. Still, we have a limitation. Still, we haven't answered the question, can I use in a CRM context? That smart contracts are not enough. So smart contracts are visible to everybody, yes. They are part of the agreement between the two parties that are exchanging value, that are exchanging data. So everybody can see the data, everybody can see the contract, everybody has a copy of it, but still they act within the circle of trust. So a smart contract contains some logic. At the end, the smart contract can be written in some programming language. So there is some if then else conditions, for example, but they only can apply this transformation, these conditions to data within the blockchain. So I can't do anything with an ERP. I can't do anything with a CRM. They're still out of my circle of trust. I need something else. I need the blockchain 3.0. And this is where Microsoft is jumping in, pioneering this evolution of blockchain. No one else is doing at the moment, at least as long as you know. Feel free to contradict me. But as a Microsoft MVP, I'm close to this technology. I've been playing with it a lot. Smart contracts are unable to access external data. So we can't call a CRM API, just to make it simple. We can't read information from a CRM entity. We need something else. We need cryptlet. A cryptlet is a piece of code that runs within the circle of trust, but can access external data securely. Still, it will maintain the integrity of the blockchain, because the cryptlet, and probably the name already reveals a bit of the implementation details, maintains this integrity by encrypting this information. So this is our connection between the blockchain and external entities, external resources like a CRM. And this is where Microsoft is working on to produce this cryptlet. And some of you may have already heard some rumors called the COCO framework, COCO, COCO, it's a funny name. It's been announced for sometimes in 2018 as an enterprise blockchain, meaning that not only we store data, so this still hashed, so this property, this value in blockchain 1.0 is our data. Not only we store code, contract, but we also store connections, integrations with other systems. They're all part of the blockchain, they're all trusted, they're all distributed and accessible to everybody, but they are there in the circle of trust. In summary, what Microsoft is building in Azure is a combination of offering of blockchain ledgers as virtual machines, basically, that you can spin off in minutes rather than in hours or days. They run on Linux. You can run Hyperledger, Ethereum, Quorum, and so on. And they represent our data structure. But on top of that, Microsoft is delivering additional pillars that are part of the Azure cloud, right? Because for example, we need to protect some data. We need to protect how we connect to our CRM, so our credentials. What's best than Azure Vault to protect these secrets, for example? So this is a perfect environment that is all seamless integrated in other offerings of Azure, providing the integrity that we need, the security that we need to still have a blockchain approach. So this is a distributed, decentralized ledger that is uncorruptible and cannot be modified without proper authorization, without consensus. So everybody should agree on applying a change. Now, not everybody may be ready to go to the cloud. So this service is also available in Azure Stack. So Azure Stack is this service by Microsoft to provide Azure to on-premises context. Building application the Azure way, but still running on-prem. When customers are ready to move to the cloud with the promise of nearly zero impact, we are able to move from Azure Stack to Azure Public Cloud with the promise of zero changes. So this is available in Azure and Azure Stack as well. All right, that was introduction to blockchain itself and why Microsoft is working on this blockchain, let's call it 3.0 blockchain for enterprises. Big announcement for next year. Some of them still under NDA, so I can't tell you everything, sorry. But yes, there are a lot of things that are happening in this space. Let's take a few questions now, and then we'll see how all of this, now that we made the connection to the external world, could potentially make sense in a CRM context. All right, so I'm going to go now into some of these use cases for customer relationship management, or in general for business industries within fintech, outside of fintech. Let's try to take really an open approach, an open mind approach. Sometimes it can be a bit visionary, don't blame me. I'm reporting also news that I read around. Some other times I'm working on it actually. I'm actively involved in building these applications themselves. So just give me a second because I'm going through some of the questions now just to see if there are any. Okay, so let's go through now some use cases and understand how we can connect or how we can use blockchain technology outside of the pure Bitcoin world. All right, this is a graph, a chart from blockchain blog on Azure. You see the URL here on screen. It didn't fit very well in the screen, but it's Microsoft source. They have looked into all the customers in Azure customers that are experimenting with blockchain, and it came out that the majority is from banking capital market, as expected. That's the background of blockchain itself. But as you can see, there are a few from government, travel, retailing, power utilities, media, and so on. So it is growing. Why it is growing? A few benefits for the business. It eliminates intermediaries. Take the example of travel business. Typically, if you want to buy a holiday package, you need to put together a lot of intermediaries, a travel agency, a airline, hotel, transfer, entertainment, and build your package. There are a lot of intermediaries in the loop. By removing the agent, do you remember Dave? Dave was our guy between Alice and Bob. By removing the intermediary, we increase efficiency, we increase speed, we create an opportunity to reduce cost. We simplify also the process itself, the operation itself, because we reduce cost, we increase speed, but also we potentially remove chances for disputes, for reconciliation, because now it's a peer-to-peer. There are not many elements in between, and I can all manage as part of my peer-to-peer network. The big value probably is that it reduces frauds, because blockchain is integral. It provides this level of integrity on data and on contracts. If someone wants to create some level of corruption or steal data, well, it will be taken out of the circle of trust, because a block that contains data and the contract is hashed, and a hash is a unique fingerprint of the data that is contained. If you tamper it with it, the hash value will change. And because you're modifying your own block, everybody else in the circle of trust will reject you. You have a different hash. It's not like mine. What did you do to your block? Or what someone else did to your block? You're not trustworthy any longer. I kick you out of the circle of trust. So the power of the distribution, of the decentralization, we don't have one central database owning all this information, but we have distributed copies all over the world potentially. We created this power of integrity. Frauds are expected to not be applied, not exist any longer. Okay, some scenarios. Financial obviously is very ahead of time because there is a direct correlation now with digital currencies, not necessarily the Bitcoin situation, but even MasterCard, Visa are experimenting with cards that are run on a blockchain. We need to understand the value. They need to understand the value yet, but I read announcement of experiment in that direction. Retail is probably an area that will benefit the most, in my opinion. The entire supply chain, chain management would benefit a lot for that. I have a case study for that I will show you in a moment. But because by nature the supply chain contains different parties that are involved, and they all agree on how goods are transferred from one party to another one over the chain, is a perfect fit for smart contracts to be agreed. Healthcare, sensitive data on health record, medical records, government, social security number, digital IDs. I live in Switzerland. There is a town next to mine called Zug, Z or Z, U-G, Zug. Google it. Google for Zug Digital ID. You will find that these guys are building ID documents on the blockchain. So citizens living in Zug own a block. So their incentive to be part of the blockchain is that they own their own identity. But their identity is also decentralized. So if someone or themselves try to tamper with it, then it will be rejected because it is part of the digital ledger, distributed digital ledger. What can they do with that? Well, they can access the services of the local councils, and it's all in there. They can pay taxes. They can vote, for example, and it will create a digital ballot and they can vote from home. And when the vote is cast, again, it will be part of a block, will be hashed, and no one can modify it. No one can corrupt it, and so on. Let's be a bit more specific. I have just a few use cases that I want to share with you guys. Escrow Services for real estate. This is a typical situation where the buyer of a real estate, of a property, is allocating some money that has to be sent not to the seller, whether it's a private person or whether it's a builder. But before doing that, we need to agree with the bank to put some money on hold as a deposit, and we sign a contract. We review that all there are conditions for selling the property, so there is no leasehold on the property, or there is no mortgage on the property that I'm selling. That is there are the conditions for safety. So there are some contracts that have been some conditions in the contract that have to be agreed. And then the seller sends the contract back to the buyer. Now, you can do this directly with the seller. Good luck with that. Or you can do it with a lawyer, with an inspector, with someone that helps you in the process. But not necessarily, sometimes you can't even skip the process. You need a notary. In some countries, at least, you need a notary to finalize, to make an official certification of ownership of a property. So there are some transactions, there are something that requires intermediaries. Every intermediary wants the slice of the value, and obviously that introduce delay, opportunity, or chances for disputes, cost, and so on. So this is why a blockchain can help by having a peer-to-peer connection where the money, the contract is part of a block, is hashed, no one can modify. It can be distributed in the digital ledger, and once the condition of the smart contract apply, and all parties agree that this smart contract is valid, we don't need an inspector, we don't need a notary to sign it off. The signing off is done by, you remember, encryption, asymmetric cryptography. The seller gives me the private key, their key in the blockchain. I sign the block. It is like a digital signature, but it will put the fingerprint on the block. It means that is done. It is closed. It is agreed by all parties. So the form of signature now can be done all digitally and cannot be modified any longer. I mentioned about the supply chain, freight transportation. First of all, we have our cow producer of milk, the food processor, so they have to agree on transportation of milk. So what is the agreement? Temperature 8 degrees, that's Celsius for you guys in the US. I don't know how much it is in Fahrenheit, but it's pretty cold. And humidity 60%. So that's the smart contract. The data is the milk. So then there is a carrier, there is an intermediary that transfer milk from the farm to the warehouse. And they have to respect the contract, the conditions in the contract. They have to keep within the temperature and the humidity levels that have been set, has been agreed. And they have to transfer all the data, all the milk destination. And then we have another intermediaries that maybe has some different conditions that have been agreed until you reach the retail store. And the retail store can reject the parcel if it doesn't reach with the defined with the set conditions. So how can the retail store reject it? How do they sign this agreement? There is a question, how is the private key shared between the two parties? It's not. It's private. It's your own key. The signature the digital signature is the asymmetric cryptography. It's based on a combination of public and private. So you share your public key and I sign with my private. So the combination of your public and my private makes it unique. When it comes to you, you can decrypt it with your own private key. So basically you have a double face key. One side is public and you share it with me for putting my signature on it. And then you use the flip side of your key, the private one, to decrypt that you own, that you have, and obviously you don't share with everybody. So it's one key with two sides of a face. One is public that I can use for signing with your name on it because it's your key. But then decryption is only with you because you have the private part of it. No one else can decrypt it because only people that have, only the entity that has provided the public key to me as the private key. There is only one combination of public-private. You give me your public key, I sign the transaction, you only own the private part to decrypt it. Okay. Let me mention a couple of guys here. Horizon State. This is an Australian startup. I have some connections there, so allow me to mention it. I mean, not personal interest, just I know the people. They are working on a blockchain for digital ballots, for voting, a democracy of voting system that provides a blockchain for digital identities, a digital ballot where we cast our vote, we send it there, and there are no aliens that can interfere, modify, influence, tamper with, hijack, or make mistake. Because once I send the vote, I sign it with the digital, with the public key of the ballot, and only the ballot can decrypt it. So they basically, no one in between can interfere and modify my vote. But then you can say, okay, but then the guys at the ballot can fake the count because they can decrypt it. Well, not, because the ballot is a digital ledger, is decentralized. So there are many, many copies of it. So unless you go and corrupt all the people in the ballot, then you have integrity by definition of decentralization of the digital ledger. Who else? Visa and MasterCard, this is public news. They are announcing their credit cards on blockchain. Now, I prefer not to make any comments here because I personally, I'll be very, very frank, I don't see the value. It's probably just jumping on the hip of blockchain because Visa and MasterCard are the intermediaries. They do charge a transaction fee in the, you know, when things are exchanged. So I will need to make more myself clear on the value, but I just want to mention because it is happening and probably we'll hear more and more about it in the future. Other cases that are completely out of fintech is media or news. Now, we all know the site like they look like Facebook, like in the or LinkedIn or all the social networks. They suffer of trolls. They suffer of fake news. These fake news allegedly had influence on the election of a head of state. You never know. How can we prevent it? Well, if a piece of news is inserted into the channel, into the network, but then is distributed, in the circle of trust, and then someone say, hey, this actually is not real news, then the news, the block that contains the news, so the piece of news is the data that is in the block, in the chain, in the ledger, doesn't reach consensus. So it doesn't enter the circle of trust. And because it is distributed again, so it is there is a copy, across an entire network that contains a digital ledger for hosting this news, it must be approved by all of them before it can enter the circle of trust. It just keep one to be out of consensus to reject the news. Now, I'm talking about consensus as 100%, because this is what it is in the moment, but you can set threshold. You can say, okay, maybe I accept 99%, and someone that is out of consensus, it will be still, in some way acceptable as a natural error in the process. But if you want to be extremely strict, and probably in financial transaction you want, in identity management you want, in voting you want to be very, very strict, then you have to go for 100% consensus. For news, whatever, maybe you can be a bit more flexible. Who else? The MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, is pioneering a project on blockchain for issuing their certificate, their prestigious certificate on the blockchain. There are so many fake MIT around. Some degree mills that they say, I'm issuing a certificate that looks like the MIT or Harvard or anybody else that is a big name, an authority in issuing certificate. And then they issue a fake one, and maybe you even pay for it. If you put the certificate in a blockchain, you can immediately verify where it's coming from. Because probably I forgot to mention, but why it's called a blockchain? It's a chain of blocks. Each block has an hash, so you can tamper it with it. We all get it now. But also, each block has a link to the previous one, where it's coming from. So you can always track it down. So blockchain is a chain, an immutable chain of blocks that are encrypted, but also you can alter the sequence. So they necessarily happen in that way. It has to be this way because for Bitcoin, where blockchain was born, we don't have a concept of amount of money that I own. So I don't know how much money I have. Also because identities are a secret. I only know the wallet that contains the money. So in order to be able to do a transaction, I have to demonstrate that I own enough Bitcoins. How do I prove it? By showing that I bought or I mined these Bitcoins somewhere in the past in my history of transactions. So in the context of MIT, they issue a certificate. It comes from MIT, so you can track it to the origin, which is called a genesis, is the first block that is issued, and then it stays there, it's hashed, it's secure. You can't break the chain, and no one can create a fake MIT certificate, and so on. Now let's carry on a bit because we have just 5 minutes to reach the end of the session. Let me mention this project that is specific to Dynamics CRM. So we all went now through understanding of blockchain needs something else to add a way of connecting to external entities. There are some use cases that have been pioneered in several industries, not only in fintech. How about our friend, Dynamics 365? So another organization in Australia, and specifically I want to mention my fellow guy, Manny Brewer. has been working on implementation of a blockchain for our e-commerce portal. The e-commerce portal is built on some technology, nothing to do with blockchain. There is a shopping cart, but this shopping cart put this transaction in Ethereum. Ethereum is one of the digital ledger. And there are some logic, to put the transaction is there. So if the user is doing some bulk payment or is some discount or is some campaigns, so there are some conditions. So there is the data, there is money in the shopping cart, and there are conditions, there are smart contracts. This goes into Ethereum in a block, but where the product coming from, where the inventory is coming from, where the invoicing is coming from Dynamics 365. But how can we make sure that the invoice that is issued out of Dynamics on a transaction that is hosted in a smart contract is safe? What if someone gets in between the smart contract and Dynamics 365? They can't get in the smart contract. So they can't enter the circle of trust of the blockchain. We get that. But Dynamics is outside. That is possible because Azure, Microsoft Azure, has Ethereum as a blockchain, but also Cryptlet. Also, this connection point that allows Dynamics, the connection to Dynamics 365 to be part of the circle of trust. So doesn't mean that Dynamics is part of the blockchain, not Dynamics 365 itself, but the connection is part of the block. So what is a connection? Well, is data that is exchanged, is identities that are shared, because we need to authenticate in Dynamics 365, we need to call an API. So there is some code that has to be created, has to be produced, and to allow this communication between data in the block and the API in Dynamics 365. This code is a cryptlet and it runs inside Ethereum. As the name implies, the transaction is encrypted at rest and in transit. Dynamics is still outside of the circle of trust, but the connection to Dynamics is a cryptlet that is inside. So if someone modifies the cryptlet, so if someone tries to modify the connection to Dynamics, then it wouldn't work any longer. The block is been tampered and will be rejected by the chain. So a question, in this case, would the vendor define which connection will be part of the smart contract or the blockchain? Absolutely. That's exactly how Cryptlet works. You decide, hey, this is what the entities that I'm exposing that you can connect to. This is the APIs. This is the service account that you would use to connect. Bundle it in a Cryptlet, and once it's there, no one can change it. So be careful though, because if your Dynamics 365 implementation changes, you change the entity that you agreed in the Cryptlet, you have a problem, because you have to go back to all the nodes in the blockchain and convince them to update their contract and their Cryptlet. This is why a solution like this in a public open blockchain doesn't really work well. It works more in the context of a private or enterprise blockchain where the parties are known. All right, this is a link to this case study. Manny Gruel writes a blog and he has described this a couple of months ago. I keep it on screen for a couple of seconds so you can take a screenshot, have a look, because it goes more into the technical details. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to go through the technical implementation, but it's all written in there. So give credit to the guy, to the Austrian guy. All right. Any last minute question? Could we get a copy of the presentation? Absolutely. I think, Jason, we are also recording this, so So if you're not already bored with hearing my voice and my accent, you can watch it again.
That's right, we are recording, and we'll be sharing a link once that's available and published.
But that's it really, guys. Thanks a lot. My contact details again on screen. Get in touch. Happy to support. Personally, as you know, CRM person, I'm watching this space. I'm running a user group in Zurich where I live on dynamic CRM and blockchain. I try to find synergies. I don't work in finance. I'm trying to find opportunities for building application on blockchain. Is a bubble, is a not? Personally, I don't care. I like new technologies. I see what happens. I hope this inspired some ideas, and maybe in 6 months from now, we do it again and we're talking about something completely different. Who knows? Thanks again for watching. Thanks again for listening.
Well, it was our pleasure, Stefano, and I see lots of very positive comments coming in. If you want to leave any feedback or make suggestions about where to take this conversation next, look for the survey that'll pop up after we do depart today. We'll definitely take a look through those comments as well. With that, we are going to conclude today's event. Have a great day, everybody.
The YouTube link is on the slide. There is a last minute question. What is the YouTube link again? Is on the slide deck. So download the slide deck. Everything is in there.
Okay, very good.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jason.
All right, thanks, Stefano.
The next one. Bye.
All right, bye.